if you guys haven't yet heard about Ozy, it turned into a huge media scandal. The Verge had one of the best headlines. They wrote something like, Ozy Media shuts down just 1 week after most of us found out it exists. It's true. I had never heard about Ozy until it unraveled. And, I feel like there's some like bigger implications for the left and, I guess maybe not for the left, but just it says something about capitalism and the media, right? But Nando, what's going on with Ozy?
Well, I have to say I had heard of Ozy Media because I used to work for the lamestream media. And if you worked in the lamestream media, Ozy was kind of a topic of conversation that was relatively common to hear. I'd also heard of Ozy Media because I've been to Ozy Fest because one of the lamestream media outlets that I worked for did some sort of partnership with Ozy Fest to cover it or something, and I was sent. And I had also heard of Ozy Media because Carlos Watson, the head of Ozy Media, went to my high school in Miami.
Oh, shit. Wow.
Yeah, he's a ransom raider. Yeah. So I definitely he spoke at my sister's commencement at high school in high school. So yeah,
I had very much. They're pumping out all these media moguls. I mean, obviously first and foremost, but then second in line, Carlos Watson. My God.
Well, they do call me the Carlos Watson of the left. I mean, we both have like Latinx names, but we're not technically Latinx.
Oh,
so
my
it's
God.
Great.
You both have $70 million in venture capital funding, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. We worked for Goldman Sachs and went to Harvard and Stanford. Yeah. Of course. So yeah, I had heard of Ozy Media, but most other people like you heard of Ozy Media for the first time after Ben Smith wrote a column in the New York Times in which he essentially destroyed them. But we have a clip of Ben Smith talking about Ozy Media on TV. Kale, why don't you throw that up?
Ben, you had the inside scoop on it. Walk us through how they fell apart.
Well, the thing about Ozy, which, many people inside media kind of knew, was that they would make these big claims, but about having an audience, but you would never run across anybody who had ever who liked Ozy, who read Ozy. Which was always a bit of kind of an enduring media mystery, but it's not like Tylenol, which poisoned 7 people with cyanide in 1982, right? Like maybe some advertisers are getting ripped off, but that's really their problem. And so I think it kind of was a thing that a lot of us were sort of vaguely aware of. And then I found out about this call in which they impersonated a YouTube executive, which really takes it from being puffery to being potential securities fraud, and reported on that. In the wake of that, a lot of other really overt lying came out. They had in particular hired a production crew to produce a show which they said was for A&E. They told all the guests it was for A&E. It turned out to be a video that they were uploading to YouTube. They continued to tell an advertiser, for instance, that it was in fact airing on Hulu, which was not true. Told people it had been sold to YouTube, which was not true. And they were, basically charging these huge premium television rates to advertisers for a video that was just being uploaded to YouTube. Like you or I could film a video on our phone and upload it to YouTube.
In fact, we do.
Yes, as we do. This show will not appear on A&E. Just I have to be forthright about that. But yeah, Ozy's been around since 2013. Which is kind of crazy if you think about it. It's almost a decade of posts at Ozy that you've never read. And the crazy thing is, like, those of us who worked in media, like whenever we would do a marketing presentation about our numbers or whatever, it was always like you do research online as to like, okay, how many numbers are like Gawker Media getting, or BuzzFeed, or Vox, or whatever. Then you'd come across Ozy and they'd be like, yeah, we have like 500 trillion uniquely visitors a month, and we're like, what this is like ridiculous. Like it's very obviously ridiculous. Like there's no one who reads this shit. Like it was like an open secret in media. But then when Ben Smith had the scoop that they were impersonating a YouTube call in order to defraud Goldman Sachs from investment, that was just a bridge too far. And it's one of my favorite stories.
It's such a great story. I feel like we haven't had a legitimate scam to obsess over in a while. I mean, a few years ago, obviously, WeWork, Theranos, Fire Festival, but And obviously I think the true feel good story is when normal people are able to rip off rich people, but barring that, rich people ripping off other rich people is a pretty good time too. That's obviously what happened with Ozy. This media figurehead Carlos Watson was just able to pull a fast one on like huge investors. Like I mentioned before, he was able to get like $70 million in total in funding from various venture capitalists. He got $2 million from the Ford Foundation. And, of special interest to me in this whole saga is the fact that there's kind of like a social justice twist, right? Like the Ford Foundation invested in him because the Ford Foundation president, Darren Walker, said something along the lines of, I think it's really important to invest in Black-owned media. It's important, especially post-racial reckoning, to kind of put our money where our mouth is and support Black media figures.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because what you're mentioning is there's three things that I foresee going on with this, with the fact that Carlos Watson was able to raise so much money. The first thing, and it's a lesson that it's hard for regular people to, like us regular people, to absorb, and really, because it takes so much chutzpah, but it's easier to raise $70 million than $70,000. If or $100,000. Like, it's easier to raise $100 million, like a lot of money, than like a lot of money, but comparatively small amount. That's like a weird kind of thing that exists. Like, when you go out there and you're raising money for your business, if you ask for like $50 million, like, you're more likely to get it than if you ask, like, no, we have this little plan, we're gonna raise $500,000 and then we'll go from there. Like that doesn't work these days. They want big investment, all or nothing. The other thing is that people invest in this kind of thing only because other people have invested in it. So the key for Carlos Watson is that he was friends with Laurene Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widow, and he convinced her to put some money in. And then he used that, and he's like, oh, look, Laurene Powell Jobs is investing. And then someone else was like, oh, shit, then I have to invest.
Right.
And they don't even look under the hood. They don't even care. It's comparatively a small amount of money for them. And all they really are buying is the ability to say that they're in the same thing with Laurene Powell Jobs.
Yep.
So that's the other thing that is going on. And then the third thing is what you're talking about, the social justice thing, in which Carlos Watson was not explicitly, but implicitly saying, like, listen, guys, I know you guys all have to do the diversity thing. There's pressure to do the diversity thing. I'm the safe guy. They're like, just, I'm the guy who's not going to, like, say something that's going to, like, get you in trouble. I'm not going to do anything that's going to, I'm not going to have, like, some rapper on who's going to, like, say something bad or whatever. Like, I'm the safe guy. Give me the money. You can put it on your presentation that we've invested in Black businesses, that we're supporting diversity, and blah, 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 blah. It's not a lot of money for you. For us, it's a good chunk of change. For you, billionaire, 100 millionaire, whatever, like, it's nothing. And it lets you check that little box. And that's what Carlos Watson was selling to these people. And they happily bought it. I mean, I don't think outside of a smaller group of investors that are, like, now suing or whatever, I think that the big ones, they don't even care. Like, it's not even, they don't even care that the audience was fake.
Yeah, I mean, you saw exactly the same thing with WeWork, and again with Theranos. I mean, these huge investors lost a ton of money, but in the grand scheme of how much money they had to begin with, it's kind of like, like a regrettable night at the casino or something.
Yeah. It got a little crazy at the blackjack table.
Crazy, yeah. So I do want to say, though, that with Ozy, the latest twist is that after this scandal came to light, all the staff was fired. And actually, we should talk about the staff and the workers in a second. All the staff was fired. Carlos Watson announced that the company was shutting down. Mere days, maybe even hours after announcing the company was shutting down, he goes on the Today Show and says, actually, no, we are going to revive. I think we have a clip of that, right?
We do.
Joining us now exclusively, Carlos Watson, Ozy Media's CEO. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming in. Let's start with the status of Ozy as we sit right now. Reports that the company shut down on Friday. Is that true? Has the company shut down, or are you still open for business?
We're going to open for business. So we're making news today. This is our Lazarus moment, if you will. This is our Tylenol moment. Last week was traumatic. It was difficult. heartbreaking in many ways. And at the end of the week, we did suspend operations with a plan to wind down. But as we spent time over the weekend, we talked to advertising partners, we talked to some of our readers, some of our viewers, our listeners, our investors. I think Ozy is part of this moment, and it's not going to be easy. But I think what we do with newsletters, what we do with TV shows, original TV shows, podcasts, and more, I think has a place.
I can't think of anything more psychopathic than to say this is our Tylenol moment. You know, like famously Tylenol like had cyanide in their pills and killed like 7 children in the early 80s, and then was able to like, you know, recover from that. And he's like, yeah, oh yeah, this is we're gonna do that. You know,
was
like
great.
It's just incredible. You know, yeah, he's doing the equivalent of tweeting through it. You know, like he's doing like the Firefest, fuck it, let's do it and be legends. You know, like he can't just. If again, I'm sure that if Carlos Watson had just been like, okay, let's just like quietly go off into the night, you know, he'd be able, like a couple years from now, he'll pop back up on like some boards and, you know, consulting business, blah blah blah. Like, you know, he's slick enough to be able to recover from this. But I think part of his problem, and it's a different thing than what Elizabeth Holmes had or whatever, is that he also has this like ambition to be a broadcaster, you know, like he needs to be like, if you ever worked with television broadcasters, a lot of them, it's like the money is nice, but what's important is just being on air. Like being on air is like air to them. Like literally like the air that they breathe, and they need to be on it. And so he needs to be on. So he can't shut down his media company because the media company was just an excuse for him to have a broadcasting career after he was like
literally have a show called The Carlos Watson Show.
Yes. Which, by the way, he profiled Ben Smith as like a media mover and shaker like a few years ago on the Carlos Watson show, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the funny thing about the Carlos Watson show. As you mentioned, he had kind of pitched it to producers and investors as something that was going to air on A&E. It turns out it aired on the prestigious channel of youtube.com. You know, because we're YouTube propagandists, when I read about this, I was like, I'm going to go to Carlos Watson's YouTube page because I want to see what's going on. Like, it's incredible. It might not still be up, or maybe it is. If you guys should check out the Carlos Watson YouTube page if you haven't yet, it rules. Oh, here, Kale's
31 views. Yeah.
Right,
oh my God.
Okay, so this is the incredible thing. So there was an article in the New York Times. I'm not sure if it was Ben Smith or somebody else, but yeah, I think it was Ben Smith. He basically dug into Carlos Watson or, you know, Ozy's YouTube numbers, found that there were a few videos that had like a million views or like hundreds of thousands of views, but was like, this is weird because these videos, you know, don't have an appropriate number of comments or engagement for the number of views, which leads me to think that they bought the views. Now, if you look at the rest of the videos, the views are like 30 views, 200 views. Like, I don't even know how they did this badly because the shows are really slickly produced. They literally
how
have
do you get
celebrities.
how do you get 230 views on a video that says is male circumcision child abuse? You know, like you think just a lot, you know?
But Nando, it even goes beyond the spicy topic. There are some videos where it's literally an interview with Sean Penn and it has 200 views. Like, I don't. It's a marvel. Honestly,
it's incredible. I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and he was telling he went to like a very prestigious business school, and he was telling me that as part of his, you know, as part of their business school thing, they had to like start a company essentially, or like make a proposal for a company or whatever, and that one of his friends in school developed this like idea for a company that essentially would make advertising more precise. And the metrics in terms of like ROI on your advertising more precise, because like famously advertising, you don't really know if like all the millions of dollars you're spending on those like State Farm ads are actually like, you know, delivering more business. And he was like coming up with a method to figure that out. And he started pitching it to people in the advertising world. They're like, are you insane? Like, what do you like? Our whole job rests on the fact that no one knows.
Right.
Like, we go to the parties, we do the ad. Like the Carlos Watson, the Ozy thing. It like you said, it's like it's a scam. But like on the other hand, the other side of it, they want it to be scam. Like the advertisers, they don't care if the actual thing actually gives them, they're like middle managers existing in this ecosystem, and they want to go to the parties and they want to go to the upfronts and they want to be hobnobbed, and then they do these massive ad buys, and the last thing they want is accountability for that investment. You know, they want to just keep saying like, no, it's look, we got Matthew McConaughey on the Lincoln commercials. That's great. And like, do we know if that like was a good thing or not? Like, no, we don't want to know. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the kind of like hilarious or sort of like, you know, feel good part of the story. Or I mean, it's both feel good and feel bad, because the feel good part is that, like I said, it's rich people ripping off other rich people. The feel bad part is that, you know, all of the rich people in this story will escape unscathed. Like you said, the advertisers don't care that they lost money. The investors don't care that they lost money. Carlos Watson, you know, might have taken a reputational hit, but he's still fucking rich. And, you know, he probably will continue. He'll probably get some sinecure, like at some, you know, other media institution if Ozy ends up folding. But I do think that it is important to say, you know, much like WeWork, the people who actually got screwed over are the people who work for this company. And I want to quickly read a quote from New York Magazine. They did an expose, or, you know, they did a report on what some of the editors and writers for Ozy were actually going through while Carlos Watson was like wheeling and dealing. And so this is a quote from the article. They write, editors were expected to turn out 8 or 9 pieces a week and have their stories polished and filed 2 weeks in advance. But it wasn't enough to simply get one's work done. Ozy wanted its employees to work long hours. Crane, who's one of the editors, says that she would routinely start working at 7:30 a.m. and go until 1 a.m. on weekdays, with only a slightly lighter schedule on weekends and holidays. I would get shouted and screamed at if I didn't work all day Saturday, says Crane. They would email people on Christmas Eve just to see if you were checking your email. No one was ever committed enough and driven enough.
And like, for what?
For what? Yeah, for what? For like, you know, 200 views.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, on some level, like, you know, if you're being exploited that much, but you're like, you know, publishing at the New York Times or something, and you know that like whatever bullshit little article that you're writing is being read by millions of people, at least there's that satisfaction. For Ozy, you're being ground to dust for nothing, for this like fake thing, which is the craziest thing.
Right. And then, and then once the scandal breaks, all of these employees immediately laid off. I don't even know if they got severance or, you know, anything other than like an email, or anything other than their emails being turned off, basically.
No, and the other thing that came out is that Ozy took $5.7 million in PPP loans and didn't give any of it to the employees. You know, which is this whole other thing. But Jen, the real victim here, I mean, the workers, yes, the real victim here is Sharon Osbourne, wife of Ozzy Osbourne. And this is maybe the funniest part of the whole story, because please check out this clip and watch how Carlos Watson just throws Sharon Osbourne under the bus.
What about this Sharon and Ozzy Osbourne? At one point, I mean, but you said that they were investors. Sharon Osbourne last week on CNBC said she's never met Carlos Watson. So what's true there?
So it's true that she hasn't met me, and it's true that as a result of her suing us, so she sued us over the name Ozy Fest, which is our music and ideas festival. She had Ozfest. The agreement was that we were going to give her shares in the company. And the way I think about it, I think the way a lot of people think about it, if you own shares in a company, you're an investor. Now, she may not have liked that word. And let's be really clear. I'm not going to raise money by telling sophisticated people that Sharon Osbourne's an investor. No smart investor is going to say, oh, great, you got Sharon Osbourne. So I think I said that clearly in the cases there.
Whoa.
Harsh. I just want to say Sharon Osbourne could still convince me.
Yeah, I trust Sharon Osbourne more than I trust Carlos fucking Watson. You know, are you kidding me? Like, all these smart, sophisticated investors who invested in Ozy? Are you kidding me? Like, is everything about this story
Ozy
is
as
just
in
amazing.
Osbourne will remain the true Ozy to all of us, I think.
Yes.
By the way, I just want to quickly mention. So you had mentioned Ozy Fest, you know, which you said you went to, right?
I went.
Oh, Nando
Green Room with Grover Norton. He was telling me about his trip to Burning Man and how much he loved it because it was like a libertarian kind of fantasy land or something. And I was like, oh, cool, man.
I was still living in New York when Ozzy Fest, was about to do like a big thing in Central Park, and I was like,
Yeah.
"What the fuck is it?" Like they had again advertising, like they had I think like painted murals, like just like all the most like groundbreaking like visual advertising that you could even think of, just plastered all over my neighborhood. And I remember at the time, like again, I didn't know what Ozzy was, but I was like, "This is the most bizarre shit I've ever seen." It's like a festival that has like Imagine Dragons and like Henry
Yeah.
Kissinger, you
Yeah,
know?
and yeah, like Carlos Watson interviewed Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I remember, and it was like, and yeah, it was all about like Ozzy was all about like, hey, what if we put a panel with like Henry Kissinger and Hillary Clinton, and they can like hash out their differences if there were any differences. But like, yeah, like it's all about like, yeah, Grover Norquist and Chuck Schumer or whatever. Like, let's sit them down and like just see if they can like hash it out or whatever. And it's like, yeah, no, this is hilarious. But they did get like, I mean, like, how did fucking Hillary Clinton? This was like pre 2016. So this was like I think she was running for president or whatever, and she went and sat down at this event and was like, and I'm like, how no one is doing any due diligence on any of this shit. Like it's just it just shows like how much of the economy is like the emperor has no clothes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I do want to make one last, broader point about, I guess, kind of the media. I think that you're right that like the reason why investors kind of glommed onto Ozzy, especially the ones who wanted to check that diversity or social justice box, the reason why they did that is because, it was pretty non-confrontational. Like Carlos Watson, comes from the business world. I think that that is true. And I saw an article in, I think, like the New York Times opinion page that talked about some of those factors. And this was written by somebody who I think was or is trying to start like a Black-led media venture, which, ostensibly is going to be a little more political, a little more controversial than Carlos Watson's Ozzy. And, she made a similar point that like the reason why, these businesses chose Ozzy is because it's safe. And she was saying like, and I'm having trouble getting funding because my content is more political. Now, I think that that is, totally true, or I think that's probably indisputable. But I think that that raises the larger question, not just of what advertisers and investors are willing to fund, but like why the media has to rely on those sources of funding to begin with.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, I am a big proponent of publicly funded media. We don't
Me
really
too.
have it in the U. Nando? You're not a venture
I mean, I think
capital
it's
guy?
no, but I just I can't see. I mean, I think about this all the time, and like there's like some on like the kind of libertarian left that are like worried about that kind of shit. It's like government run media, or like Glenn Green, like like Glenn Greenwald-ish type of thing. But it's like, I mean, what other alternatives are there, bro? Like, I mean, I guess you could do like the new thing is like reader supported media, which like Substack, and I support that all the shit. But like it's unclear to me that you can do that at the scale necessary to do the kind of journalism and required to live in a basic level democracy. That a publicly funded media is the only, and finding solutions to that should be something that we should be thinking about a lot to maintain its kind of independence from whomever's in power, but to also be publicly funded. I mean, it's a tricky thing, but I'm sure it can be done.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to, I just want to say that like lots of other countries have made it happen. Of course, the UK's BBC is kind of like the example that we all know about. But I think that, lots of the Nordic states, Japan, New Zealand, I think that they all have publicly funded media, which is actually not the same as state media. So again, like you're right. Like I think that lots of Americans are sort of afraid of this idea of state-run media, probably for good reason. I mean, nobody wants like, like steel radio installed in everybody's house that just blasts like state propaganda all day. I get it. But the way that other countries make it work is, they fund the media using public funds, but they set up things like multi-year funding agreements or, trusts, or they have independent civilian oversight boards that make sure that those lines don't get crossed. So like there's a way to do it. And I've always said the
Postal Service should run the public broadcaster. I mean, the Postal Service, you trust that like when you send something in the mail, like some Trump or whatever is not going to read your shit. right? I mean, on some level, right? They do maintain a certain level of independence and transparency and privacy and all that shit. Yeah, the Postal Service should just run a channel.
We talked about postal banking on this week's Jacobin show. Postal media, I'm into it.
Yeah, let's do it. And you just call it Going Postal. There you go. If you enjoyed this video from Jacobin Weekends, please hit like and subscribe. That way, you'll enjoy all of our backlog, as well as all of our future content, including interviews, live streams, and clips. Thank you.